Welcome back to part 2 of our investigation into the Salisbury poisonings. In the last episode, we revealed how we identified the first Russian agent responsible for the attack. If you haven't seen it, go back and start there. In this episode, we'll dive into what happened next, how we exposed the second agent involved, and how we found that there was a third agent all along. Identifying the second suspect, Alexander Petrov, proved to be much more difficult. We couldn't find anything about him from elite military academies, no photos, no registered information in databases. At the time, I had also recently worked on another story about an attempted coup in Montenegro in 2016. On the train home one night, I was thinking about it and if that investigation could help this one. It had also included a GRU agent, so maybe there were patterns I could recognize that would help. When I got home, I looked at the passport of that person in Montenegro. His name was Eduard Shishmakov.
Immediately, I noticed that his fake identity passport, as Eduard Shirokov, had a number that was different from the two Salisbury suspects by only about 26 numbers in the last few digits.
3 GRU agents with nearly back-to-back passport numbers. It was mind-boggling, frankly, but there were other revelations from this passport. When we had investigated Shishmakov, we had identified a particular pattern that was used to create his fake identity. The GRU had given him a fake identity with the same first name as his real identity, and they had also kept the birthday the same. As we all know, the best lies are ones that can be based on truth. So it is a common practice in Russian intelligence communities to build cover stories out of a person's real identity, using real facts about them, like their name and hometown, to build a new identity. This makes it more believable when they have to actually deliver on their fake persona. So we thought maybe this tactic had been used with Alexander Petrov as well. We started searching for an Alexander Yevgenievich, his first and middle names, born on the date that we knew that Petrov, the fake identity, was born on. We limited the search to St. Petersburg, where Petrov had apparently grown up under his fake identity. Searching for this, we only found one person that matched, an Alexander Yevgenievich in St. Petersburg in the early 2000s. He was registered to a dormitory which was just across the street from Russia's elite military medical school, the Kirov Academy of Military Medicine in St. Petersburg. When we researched the other people registered to the same address, we found that most of them had been military doctors. So from that, we hypothesized that Alexander, whoever he was, also had gone on to be a doctor. It was reasonable to think that he would then be a useful part of a team responsible for killing people with poison. But from there, we couldn't find more on this Alexander in the public sphere. So we started contacting everyone we could find whom we knew attended the military academy, messaging them one person at a time on social media. We included photos from Russia Today's interview and the UK's Most Wanted posters and asked if anyone had seen this person. Everyone we asked said no, except for one person who said yes. He then gave us the name we'd been searching for. It was Alexander Mishkin. This was a credible source, confirming details that matched some of our findings. But we needed to be sure and collect further proof. We went back to the databases and began searching for everything we could find on Alexander Mishkin.
In a car registration database, we found a Volvo purchased by this Alexander Mishkin.
Unbelievably, the car had been registered to Horoshevskoye Chaussee 76B, the headquarters of the GRU. This was a critical piece of evidence. We needed to know that he was a GRU agent. Before we published the findings, though, we wanted more confirmation. So we sent a colleague from the Insider to the small village where Mishkin had grown up.
A town with a population of just over 500 people.
There he found a neighbor who lived next to the Mishkin's grandmother and had heard about Alexander. The neighbor confirmed that the grandmother had long bragged about her grandson, who went to military school and then received awards from President Putin himself. This was the final piece of the puzzle. Now we knew that Alexander Petrov was actually Alexander Mishkin, a doctor and agent for the GRU. We published these findings even before the UK police or intelligence services had discovered the true identities of both men. It was a massive story and finally revealed the men responsible for the poisoning. But we were then also alerted of another potential piece of the puzzle, a third suspect. The St. Petersburg independent publication Fontanka had discovered another Russian man who had traveled to London on the same day as Chepiga and Mishkin, with a similar passport number to them. His name was supposedly Sergei Fedotov. When we dug into his name, we found the same thing as with the other agents. He wasn't registered in any Russian databases and there was no digital footprint. We did find a phone number registered to his name, however. This helped us eventually obtain leaked records of his phone metadata, which could tell us about his calls and movements at the time of the poisoning. During his trip to London, we found that he made hundreds of phone calls to a phone number in Moscow, sometimes very brief, sometimes for over an hour. This led us to suspect that he may have been one of the coordinating officers on the mission, on the ground for the GRU, and perhaps he was even a senior member of the team. The metadata could also tell us about where he went on during his trip, which essentially was nowhere. He stayed in his London hotel room for almost 2 days straight. There was only one brief adventure out of the hotel for him. He took a brief trip along the banks of the Thames River.
When the UK police released a record of Mishkin and Chepiga's movements in London on this day, we found that they were also near the embankment at this time. They were there for about an hour before boarding a train to Salisbury from Waterloo Station. It was the 3rd of March, just 1 day before the poisoning. We now suspect they were likely there to meet their mission commander.
It took us much longer to identify Sergei Fedotov's true identity, but eventually we found out that this was a man named Denis Sergeyev. He was a GRU Major General and one of the highest-ranking officers in Unit 29155. The Salisbury poisoning was a major case that first broke open the story of this elite unit of operatives. It is also where my obsession with Unit 29155 began, and where we first began to identify critical patterns in the GRU recruitment of these dangerous agents and the creation of their fake identities. The sequential passport numbers, the formulas for building cover stories and the naming of the spies, the revelations about the schools they might have attended, the addresses they frequent, these are all patterns that we've now found in our other investigations. But exposing these 3 men also blew open countless missions previously carried out by Unit 29155. When we revealed their identities, we cracked the code, and from there, a terrifying timeline of attempted assassinations, coups, and violent plots spooled out in front of us. From Ukraine to the Czech Republic, to Barcelona, to Kabul, the map of Unit 29155's missions is far more complex and significant than I could have ever imagined. And it all started with Salisbury and unmasking these 3 GRU agents. In the next episode in this series on Unit 29155, I will share how finding these men led me to uncover the poisoning of a Bulgarian arms dealer, an assassination attempt that almost went unnoticed for years, involving the same GRU operatives and the same deadly poison, Novichok. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss it.